Berlin, Germany. Abwehr Headquarters, Terpitzufer 76-78. January 15, 1940. The morning light filters through the tall windows of German Military Intelligence Headquarters. Major Friedrich Wilhelm von Boeticher, German military attaché recently returned from Washington, D.C., spreads reconnaissance photographs across the polished oak table. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, chief of the Abwehr, leans forward with interest. Von Boeticher had spent years observing America. He knew its factories, its railroads, its industrial heartland. And what he saw convinced him of one certainty: America was not a military threat. The United States, von Boeticher wrote in his official report dated January 1940, remains hopelessly unprepared for modern warfare. Their industrial base, while extensive, is oriented toward civilian consumption. Converting refrigerator factories to tank production is a fantasy. The Abwehr's intelligence assessment was methodical, detailed, and catastrophically wrong. German analysts had meticulously catalogued America's productive capacity. They counted factories, 184,000 manufacturing facilities. They measured steel production, 52.8 million tons in 1939. They tracked railroad mileage, 429,883 miles of track, more than all of Europe combined. But numbers alone meant nothing without interpretation. And the interpretation was dismissive. Captain Hermann Bohn, chief economic analyst for the Abwehr, delivered his assessment to Wehrmacht High Command in March 1940. American industrial psychology is fundamentally incompatible with military production. They build for comfort and profit, not efficiency and standardization. Their automobile factories cannot simply switch to building tanks. The engineering mindsets are entirely different. The report continued with what seemed like damning evidence. American tank production in 1939, exactly 969 units. German production the same year, 4,117 tanks. American aircraft production, 5,856 planes. German production, 8,295 aircraft. At current trajectories, Bohn calculated, even if America enters the war in 1941, their industrial mobilization will take a minimum of 3 years. By then, the war will be decided. The Abwehr possessed one piece of intelligence that should have alarmed them: a report from Agent A-3549, who had toured the Willow Run bomber plant site in Michigan in late 1940. The proposed factory would occupy 3,500,000 square feet under a single roof. It would employ 42,000 workers on a single assembly line stretching more than a mile. Typical American grandiosity, dismissed Bohn when reviewing the report. They design monuments, not factories. This facility will take years to complete and longer to make operational. What Bohn didn't know, what couldn't conceive, was that Willow Run would be operational by May 1942. That by 1944, it would produce a complete B-24 Liberator heavy bomber every 63 minutes. That a single assembly line would outproduce the entire German aircraft industry. German military tradition valued craftsmanship. Their tanks were engineering marvels, each one requiring 6,000 man-hours to manufacture. The Tiger I tank, introduced in 1942, was a masterpiece of armored warfare. 88 mm main gun, 120 mm frontal armor, sophisticated torsion bar suspension. Production rate: 1,347 Tiger I tanks from 1942 to 1944. American analysts were reading the same intelligence reports the Abwehr received. But they reached opposite conclusions. A U.S. War Department assessment from April 1940 noted, German production philosophy emphasizes quality and craftsmanship. American production philosophy emphasizes volume and standardization. In a protracted conflict, volume defeats craftsmanship. In Berlin, this American assessment was intercepted, decoded, and filed with a notation: enemy propaganda. Wishful thinking. The German railroad system, the Reichsbahn, was the pride of continental Europe. With 43,430 miles of track and 23,000 locomotives, it represented engineering excellence and Prussian efficiency. The WWII's transportation analysts calculated that no nation could match German rail capacity for military logistics. They had detailed intelligence on American railroads. Massive networks, certainly, but fragmented among 141 different companies with varying standards, equipment, and operational procedures. "A organizational nightmare," concluded the Wehrmacht's logistics assessment. Impressive on paper, impossible to coordinate for military purposes. What German analysts failed to comprehend was that American railroad companies had been coordinating cross-country freight for decades. That the Pennsylvania Railroad alone operated 27,000 freight cars with a capacity exceeding the entire Reichsbahn's dedicated military rolling stock. That American loading gauges were significantly larger, allowing freight cars carrying 50 to 70 tons compared to German cars hauling 15 to 20 tons. By December 1941, as America entered the war, the WWII's assessment remained unchanged. Major Erwin Lehausen, Canaris's deputy, summarized the intelligence consensus in a memo to Wehrmacht High Command. American industrial mobilization poses a long-term concern but not an immediate threat. We estimate 24 to 36 months before significant military production materializes. Current focus should remain on Soviet and British capacity. The stage was set for one of history's greatest intelligence failures. German field analysts, confident in their assessments, comfortable in their assumptions, had no idea they were about to witness an industrial transformation that would redefine modern warfare. In Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Los Angeles, the factories were already changing. The refrigerator lines were indeed being retooled. But not slowly, not tentatively. At an unprecedented pace that would soon make German intelligence reports look like historical curiosities. Lisbon, Portugal. WWII Station, Rua Buenos Aires. June 1942. The decoded message from Agent Tramp in New York arrived at 0347 hours. Station Chief Major Ludwig von Karsthoff read it once, frowned, then read it again. The numbers couldn't be right. According to Tramp's report, citing sources at the War Production Board, American industry had manufactured 24,997 aircraft in the first 5 months of 1942. That was nearly 5,000 planes per month. Impossible. Von Karsthoff filed a priority inquiry. Tramp report June 5 requires verification. Production figures exceed plausibility. Request confirmation via alternate sources. 3 weeks later, confirmation arrived from 4 independent sources, including one highly placed agent inside the Douglas Aircraft Company. The numbers weren't inflated. If anything, they were conservative. American aircraft production for 1942 would reach 47,836 planes. In Berlin, the WWII's Economic Intelligence Section scrambled to reassess. Their entire framework was collapsing. Hauptmann Werner Hoffmann, assigned to analyze the reports, later recalled, "We checked the figures 5 times. We suspected disinformation. But the pattern was consistent across multiple sources. Either we had systematically miscalculated American capacity, or something extraordinary was happening in their industrial sector." Something extraordinary was indeed happening. What German analysts had failed to understand was the fundamental nature of American manufacturing. The automobile industry hadn't slowly converted to military production, it had exploded into it. The Ford River Rouge complex in Michigan, the world's largest integrated factory, underwent conversion in early 1942. The facility, which had produced 4,000 civilian vehicles daily, now manufactured 8,685 B-24 Liberator bombers, by war's end, 57, 851 aircraft engines 4, 291 military trucks daily tank engines, jeeps, and amphibious vehicles. One factory. One company. In May 1942, WWII agent A3732, operating undercover at a machine tools convention in Chicago, filed a report that headquarters initially dismissed as fantasy. Toured Chrysler Tank Arsenal in Detroit. Facility covers 113 acres under roof. Assembly line produces one M3 tank every 12 hours. Chrysler engineers claim they will reduce this to 8 hours by year's end. Witnessed tank undergo firing tests on indoor range. Quality appears combat-worthy. Production target for 1942, 22,234 tanks. The final 1942 American tank production figure, 24,997 tanks. Meanwhile, German tank production for the entire year, 9,300 tanks and assault guns. At Wehrmacht High Command, the intelligence assessments were causing alarm. General Oberst Alfred Jodl, Chief of Operations, demanded explanation from the Abwehr. How did our estimates deviate by a factor of 5? The answer was becoming clear. German analysts had projected American production based on European industrial models. But America wasn't following European models. Henry J. Kaiser, a construction magnate with no shipbuilding experience, had revolutionized cargo ship production. Traditional shipyards built Liberty ships in 244 days. Kaiser's Richmond Shipyard No. 2 in California, using assembly line techniques and prefabrication, reduced this to an average of 42 days. On November 12, 1942, Kaiser's shipyard assembled the SS Robert E. Peary from keel laying to launch in 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes. A complete 10,500-ton cargo ship in less than a week. German naval intelligence confirmed the report but noted an exceptional publicity stunt. Not representative of consistent production capacity. They were wrong again. By 1943, Kaiser's shipyards were launching 3 Liberty ships per day. The United States would produce 2,710 Liberty ships during the war, more tonnage than the entire German merchant marine. The railroad reports were equally staggering. Agent reports from late 1942 described American freight movements that exceeded German logistics capacity by orders of magnitude. The Pennsylvania Railroad, America's largest, operated 27,000 freight cars, German Reichsbahn military allocation, 19,000 cars, 10,000 route miles 4, 800 locomotives average freight car capacity, 50 to 70 tons, German average, 15 to 20 tons. But more disturbing than the numbers was the operational tempo. American railroads were moving military freight at speeds and volumes the Reichsbahn couldn't match even on its best-maintained lines. A typical American freight train in 1943, 75 to 100 cars, 4,000 to 5,500 tons, traveling at 35 to 40 miles per hour on mainline routes. German military trains, 40 to 50 cars, 800 to 1,000 tons, 20 to 25 miles per hour average speeds. Oberst Wolfgang Pickert, Luftwaffe liaison to the Abwehr, received a field report in August 1942 from an officer returned from internment in the United States. The officer had been transported by rail from New York to a POW camp in Texas, a journey of 1,900 miles completed in 48 hours. For comparison, Pickert noted, moving a Panzer Division 800 kilometers on German rail typically requires 72 to 96 hours under optimal conditions. The industrial statistics kept arriving, each one more alarming than the last. American steel production 1942, 85.3 million tons. German steel production 1942, 32.1 million tons. American aluminum production 1942, 892,000 tons. German aluminum production 1942, 264,000 tons. American synthetic rubber production 1942, 22,434 tons. German synthetic rubber production 1942, 71,000 tons, but from already strained chemical industry. By late 1942, the Abwehr's assessment had shifted from dismissive to concerned. But they still didn't grasp the full magnitude. Colonel George Hansen, who would later head WWII intelligence, wrote in a classified memo, "American production exceeds our estimates but remains constrained by shipping limitations and operational inexperience. Quantitative superiority does not automatically translate to battlefield effectiveness." This was the last refuge of German analysis. Hope that American equipment would prove inferior in combat, that crews would be poorly trained, that logistics would fail under combat conditions. The first field reports from North Africa were about to destroy that hope too. In November 1942, Operation Torch landed American forces in Morocco and Algeria. General Lieutenant Wilhelm Ritter von Thoma, captured at El Alamein, was interrogated by British intelligence. His comments were intercepted by the WWII via their penetration of British communications. "The Americans are green, yes," von Thoma acknowledged. "But their equipment is extraordinary. Their tanks are reliable, their logistics are seamless, and their artillery is plentiful beyond anything we've faced. They waste ammunition because they have so much of it." The industrial avalanche was beginning to reach the battlefield, and German field commanders were experiencing firsthand what their intelligence services had failed to predict. The reports coming back to Berlin grew increasingly desperate in tone, not because of any single devastating defeat, but because of the grinding realization. America was just getting started. Berlin. Reich Chancellery. March 15, 1943. Reichsminister Albert Speer spread the latest WWII intelligence summary across his desk. The numbers seemed designed to induce despair. American military production, 1942. 47,836 aircraft 24, 997 tanks 17, 565 artillery pieces 238, 926 machine guns 4, 458, 600 tons of steel allocated to military production. Projected American production, 1943. 85,898 aircraft 29, 497 tanks 43, 000 artillery pieces. Speer picked up his red pen and wrote in the margin, "If accurate, we cannot win a production war. Strategic reassessment required." But even Speer, with his industrial expertise, didn't fully comprehend what was happening across the Atlantic. The 1943 projections would prove conservative. Actual American production, 1943. 85,898 aircraft, projection accurate, 29, for 97 tanks, projection accurate, 151, 053 artillery pieces, projection missed by 250%. At Willow Run, the B-24 Liberator production line had reached its stride. The facility that German analysts had dismissed as American grandiosity was now producing one complete four-engine heavy bomber every 63 minutes. Each B-24 Liberator contained 1,550,000 manufactured parts 360, 000 rivets 13, 500 square feet of aluminum skin 20, 000 feet of electrical wiring for 1,200 horsepower engines. From raw materials to flying aircraft in less than an hour. WWII agent B-3128, who had somehow gained access to a Willow Run production briefing in May 1943, filed a report that his handlers initially classified as unreliable. The assembly line extends 1 mile. Workers on 3 shifts, 42,000 total. Monthly production rate, 432 bombers. Annual capacity, 5,184 heavy bombers from this single facility. Quality control stations every 150 feet. I observed 1 aircraft complete final assembly, undergo engine tests, and taxi for delivery flight within a 70-minute period. The report was verified by photographic reconnaissance. Willow Run was real, and it was just one of 22 major American aircraft plants. The strategic implications were staggering. The German aviation industry, working at maximum capacity, would produce approximately 25,000 aircraft in 1943. The United States would produce 85,898, more than 3 times German output. But quantity alone doesn't tell the full story. German analysts clung to the belief that American mass production meant inferior quality. They were wrong. Generalleutnant Adolf Galland, commander of German fighter forces, interrogated captured American P-47 Thunderbolt pilots in mid-1943. His report to Göring was blunt. The P-47 is a formidable aircraft, well-armored, reliable, and produced in numbers that allow pilots extensive training. We shoot down American fighters, and the next day there are more of them. We lose experienced pilots we cannot replace. They lose aircraft they replace within days. The numbers backed Galland's assessment. American P-47 production in 1943, 3,661 aircraft. German FW-190 production, their closest equivalent 4,188 aircraft. Similar numbers, but with one crucial difference. America was simultaneously producing 15 other combat aircraft types in similar volumes. Total Axis aircraft production 1943, Germany, Japan, Italy combined 47,000 aircraft. American aircraft production 1943, 85,898 aircraft. The industrial disparity was becoming a military catastrophe. On the ground, the numbers were equally overwhelming. The American M4 Sherman tank had become the butt of jokes among German tank crews. Tommy Cooker, they called it, or Ronson, lights every time. The Sherman was inferior to late-war German tanks in armor and firepower. A Panther or Tiger could destroy a Sherman at ranges the Sherman couldn't effectively engage. But here's what German intelligence failed to calculate into their assessments. American M4 Sherman production 1942 to 1945, 49,234 tanks. German Panther production 1943 to 1945, 5,976 tanks. German Tiger I and II production 1942 to 1945, 1,839 tanks. For every Tiger I produced, each one an engineering masterpiece requiring 6,000 man-hours, America produced 26.7 Sherman tanks at 1,000 man-hours each. Wehrmacht Generaloberst Heinz Guderian, the architect of German armored doctrine, wrote in a classified assessment, "The Sherman is inferior to our Panthers in single combat. But the Americans field 5 Shermans for every Panther. They replace losses within weeks. Our replacement rate measures in months. They win through mass, reliability, and the simple mathematics of attrition." The logistics gulf was becoming most apparent on the Eastern Front, where German forces could observe both American and Soviet equipment through Lend-Lease programs. An intelligence report from Heeresgruppe Mitte, dated November 1943. Soviet logistics dramatically improved by American trucks. Observe Studebaker US 62.5-ton truck in vast numbers. Reliable, standardized, weather-resistant. Wehrmacht motor transport increasingly dependent on captured vehicles due to German production shortfalls. Enemy uses single standardized truck type. We maintain 12 different truck models with incompatible parts. The numbers were damning. American truck production 1942 to 1945, 2,382,311 vehicles. German truck production 1942 to 1945, 314,000 vehicles. Of the 2.38 million American trucks, 401,492 were sent to the Soviet Union under Lend-Lease, more trucks than Germany produced during the entire war. By mid-1943, captured German documents revealed a new tone in Wehrmacht assessments. The confidence had evaporated, replaced by grim acknowledgement. A classified report from the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, OKW, Economic Division, July 1943. American industrial mobilization has exceeded all projections. Current production rates cannot be sustained by material and labor constraints, but no such constraints are evident. Steel production continues to increase. Labor force expanded through female participation and multi-shift operations. No indication of production ceiling. The railroad reports had become particularly alarming. American rail logistics were moving war materials at scales that made German capabilities look artisanal. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, one of dozens of American carriers, published its 1943 performance statistics, which WWII agents obtained from public records. 77 million ton-miles of military freight moved 223,000 railroad cars in service, average freight car turnaround. 4.2 days, 97.3% on-time performance for military shipments. German military rail operations, by comparison, were deteriorating. The Reichsbahn's military freight statistics for 1943 showed 65% on-time performance, down from 84% in 1941. Average freight car turnaround, 8.7 days. Chronic equipment shortages increasing Allied bombing disruption. But the most devastating comparison came from the shipyards. German U-boat production in 1943, 270 submarines, a remarkable achievement representing maximum industrial effort. American shipbuilding in 1943. 1,896 merchant ships, total 19,238,626 tons, 27 aircraft carriers, fleet, light, and escort types, 23 cruisers, 128 destroyers and destroyer escorts, 77 submarines. The United States was building merchant ships faster than U-boats could sink them. In 1943, Allied merchant ship construction outpaced losses by 12.8 million tons. Gross Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the U-boat force, wrote in his war diary on May 24, 1943, "The enemy builds ships faster than we can sink them. This month we lost 41 U-boats, our highest monthly loss." American convoy escorts increase in number and effectiveness. The Battle of the Atlantic cannot be won under current conditions. German field commanders who had once dismissed American industrial capacity were now witnessing its battlefield manifestation. American artillery fire was described in Wehrmacht after-action reports as limitless, profligate, and overwhelming. The American philosophy was simple. Why calculate precise ammunition requirements when you can simply fire more shells than needed? German forces carefully rationed artillery ammunition. American forces expended it freely because they had so much. An intercepted American artillery manual instruction from 1943, "When in doubt, fire more shells. Supply is not your constraint." By late 1943, even the most optimistic German assessments acknowledged the reality. America's industrial capacity was not just superior, it was exponentially superior. And it was still accelerating. The peak was yet to come. Interrogation Center. 7th Army, France. September 1944. The captured German soldier, an Oberstleutnant from the 276th Infantry Division, sat across from his American interrogators. He'd been asked about German morale, tactical dispositions, unit strength. Instead, he talked about supplies. "I know how you defeated us," he said, his voice flat with exhaustion. His interrogators leaned forward. "You piled up the supplies and then let them fall on us." The remark would be quoted in historical accounts for decades. Because in one sentence, this anonymous soldier had captured the entire nature of the war's outcome. The material avalanche had become unstoppable. Final American production figures, 1941 to 1945. Aircraft, 300,317 total. Heavy bombers, 35, 743 medium bombers, 18, 381 light bombers, 6, 591 fighters, 99, 950 trainers, 43, 045 transport aircraft, 23, 929 all other types, 72,678. To put this in perspective, America produced more aircraft from 1941 to 1945 than Germany, Japan, Britain, and the Soviet Union combined. Tanks and combat vehicles, 88,410 tanks, 257,390 artillery pieces, 2,382,311 trucks and vehicles, 41.4 billion rounds of small arms ammunition. But the final numbers tell only part of the story. The true measure was capability and deployment. By June 1944, D-Day, American logistics had achieved what German planners considered impossible: supplying a massive amphibious invasion across an ocean. The statistics of Operation Overlord would have seemed like science fiction to WWII analysts in 1940. 6,939 naval vessels, including 4,126 landing craft, 590 aircraft providing support. 156,000 troops landed on D-Day. 326, 547 troops landed within 1 week. 500,000 tons of supplies delivered in the first month. The German Reichsbahn, even at peak capacity, moved approximately 200,000 tons of military freight daily across its entire network. American forces in France were receiving more tonnage than that through a single artificial port, Mulberry Harbor, supplemented by captured ports. Albert Speer, in his post-war interrogations, was asked when he knew Germany would lose the war. His answer: "When I saw the intelligence reports on American production in mid-1943. We could not compete. The numbers made victory impossible." The Reichsbahn, Germany's pride, had collapsed under the strain. By late 1944, Allied bombing had reduced German rail capacity by 73%. But even before the bombing campaign, the system was inadequate. A German General Staff report from September 1944 compared logistics. American logistics capacity in France, September 1944. 20,000 tons daily delivered to frontline units. 500-mile supply line from Normandy to the front. Average truck turnaround, 3.5 days. Spare parts availability, 94%. German logistics capacity on Western Front, September 1944. 5,000 tons daily to frontline units, estimated. Constant fuel shortages. 67% of motor transport non-operational due to lack of spare parts. Rail network degraded by bombing. Generaloberst Alfred Jodl, signing Germany's unconditional surrender on May 7, 1945, later testified at Nuremberg. Our intelligence services underestimated American industrial capacity by a factor we still cannot fully quantify. We planned for a European war. They prepared for a global industrial competition. We believed in quality over quantity. They demonstrated that sufficient quantity becomes its own quality. The final statistics are almost incomprehensible. Total American war production value, $186 billion, 1940s dollars. Total German war production value, $75 billion, 1940s dollars. America had outproduced Germany by a factor of 2.5:1 while simultaneously fighting a two-ocean war and supplying its allies. The Lend-Lease program alone sent to Allied nations 401,492 trucks to the USSR 14, 795 aircraft to the USSR 7, 056 tanks to the USSR, 1.5 million miles of telephone wire to 670, 371 tons of petroleum products, 478,000 tons of food. The United States had supplied its allies with more military equipment than Germany produced for itself. The Liberty Ship program epitomized American industrial philosophy. 2,710 ships produced. Average construction time, 42 days. Fastest construction, 4 days, 15.5 hours. SS Robert E. Peary. Total tonnage, 29 million deadweight tons. For context, the entire German merchant marine in 1939 totaled 4,483,000 tons. America built 6 times that capacity in Liberty ships alone, and that was just one shipbuilding program among dozens. In the ruins of Berlin, WWII files were discovered containing the intelligence assessments from 1940 to 1941. American analysts reading them couldn't suppress dark amusement. One memo from February 1941, written by Hauptmann Werner Hoffmann, projected maximum American aircraft production at 18,000 units annually under the most optimistic assumptions. Actual 1944 American aircraft production: 96,318 aircraft. The German assessment had been wrong by a factor of 5.3:1. A classified WWII summary from April 1941 concluded American industrial mobilization, while concerning in the long term, will require 36 to 48 months to reach militarily significant levels. Current production demonstrates limited understanding of modern warfare requirements. Within 24 months, American industry was outproducing Germany in every military category. The final irony appeared in a captured document from late 1944, an internal WWII memo discussing the intelligence failure. Our assessments of American capacity were not inaccurate based on available data and European industrial models. Our error was assuming American industry would operate according to European constraints. They invented new industrial models we failed to anticipate. Mass production, standardization, and assembly line techniques applied to military manufacturing at scales unprecedented in history. The anonymous German soldier's comment proved prophetic. America had indeed piled up supplies and let them fall. The final count: every 8 hours, one Liberty ship launched. Every 63 minutes, one B-24 bomber completed. Every 5 minutes, one M4 Sherman tank finished. Every day, 3,970 military trucks produced. Every week, 1,650 aircraft of all types manufactured. By war's end, the United States had produced more military equipment than all other combatant nations combined. The German field analysts who in 1940 had confidently dismissed American industrial potential lived to see factories produce weapons at rates they had deemed mathematically impossible. In January 1940, Major von Boetticher had written, "America cannot wage modern war." By May 1945, America had waged war on 3 continents, supplied 4 major allies, defeated 2 global empires, and done it while never straining its industrial capacity beyond 70% of theoretical maximum. The analysts had clocked the trains. They had seen the factories. They had counted the workers. But they had never imagined the scale. And by the time they understood, it was far too late. The Materielschlacht was over. America had won it before most German commanders realized it had begun.